Well, here we are, finishing the early part of the Megadeth discography with probably the most anticipated part of the discography review. Speaking, of course, about Megadeth's Rust in Peace, their landmark album, their trademark album. I mean, this is the album that a lot of people, when they think of Megadeth, they think of this album. This is it. This is their classic album, their #1 most remembered work. And I have to sit here and I have to explain what my beef is with this album. But a little bit of a backstory on this album. Megadeth went through another lineup change. What else is new? You'll be hearing that a lot in this discography review. So they had another lineup change, this time replacing lead guitarist Jeff Young with Marty Friedman, and replacing drummer Chuck Baylor with Nick Menza. Now this lineup would continue all the way up and through Megadeth's 1999 album, Risk. Then, well, that's a different time. But Rust in Peace is their biggest album to date, I believe. It wasn't their first album to go platinum, but it was a pretty big album for them. Now they were heading out on world tours. There was the Clash of the Titans tour where they were touring with Anthrax and Slayer. You know, they were a world-renowned band at this point. And I love Rust in Peace. I love the album. It's a fantastic album. Still one of my favorites of theirs to this day. With songs like Holy Wars, Hangar 18, Rust in Peace Polaris, Tornado of Souls, Take No Prisoners, Five Magics. Everything on this album is, well, great. Perfectly crafted. But my beef with this album comes from the fact, not from the album itself, not from the production, not from the composition, but the album's legacy. The legacy of this album is what bothers me. And what I mean by the legacy of this album, I'm speaking of how, at this point in Megadeth's history, the current 13 era, most of their set list is comprised of songs from Rust in Peace. In their live set, they play Holy Wars, Hangar 18, Take No Prisoners, Tornado of Souls on a regular basis. And most of the time, they have an 8 or 9 song set. That's almost half their set list coming from Rust in Peace, and they play it consistently. They're great songs, but seriously, a little variation, please. I mean, it was great when the 20th anniversary Rust in Peace tour happened and they played the whole album in its entirety. That was great. I loved going to that show. It was fantastic. But whenever I see a set list, whenever they upload a photo of the current set list that they're playing that night on their Facebook, or I see it on their Twitter feed, and I look, okay, let's see how many songs from Rust in Peace they're going to play tonight. When I have to ask that question, I think that there's a problem. And I know I'm harping. I know I'm harping about how they play Rust in Peace too much, and you'd probably think a Megadeth fan is complaining about Rust in Peace being overplayed? What's the problem here? But I digress. Production-wise, on the original part of the Rust in Peace, the original pressing, volume-wise, it's really, really, really quiet. In fact, the 2 previous albums, Peace Sells and So Far, So Good, So What, in their original pressing, was louder than Rust in Peace. In fact, Rust in Peace is so quiet that it reminds me of Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good quiet. And frankly, the volume level on Kimba Big really isn't that loud. I mean, it's hard to hear what's going on. This would, of course, and of course they follow this same ideology into Countdown to Extinction. In fact, in my opinion, they don't correct this problem until Euthanasia. But Rust in Peace will always be one of those albums that if you are a guitar player, if you're a bass player, if you're a drummer, this is an album you need to listen to and take notes to. The introduction of Marty Friedman, who is a shredder in his own right. I love the stuff he did with Jason Becker with Cacophony. I mean, the Ninja is a fantastic song. And Nick Menza, a fantastic drummer, coming into the lineup. It really was one of the best things to ever happen to Megadeth. Of course, they would fall out and there would be lineup changes, 10 years down the road. But for 10 years, Mustaine had a consistent lineup. Of course, this consistent lineup would ultimately be part of Megadeth's undoing in the end. Rust in Peace, to me, will always be one of those albums that I keep near and dear to my heart. And Rust in Peace is always in constant rotation. I'd probably listen to tracks from Rust in Peace at least 4 times a day. And you know what? I really don't get tired of listening to it. Now, there's a 2004 remaster of Rust in Peace out there. I don't recommend picking it up, though, even though I did harp on the fact that the volume on the original pressing really isn't that great. Mustaine really fucked up the mixes for Rust in Peace in 2004. I mean, the bass, the drums, the swapping of certain vocal tracks, but that's not necessarily his fault. Bit unnecessary. Now, when Peace Sells had a 25th anniversary expanded edition that came out, a remaster done correctly, as I would say, which is just a little bit of a volume boost, I would think that for Rust in Peace's 25th anniversary that we could see the same treatment. Of course, this will probably not happen. Rust in Peace will always have a 10 out of 10 in my eyes. A fantastic album. Next day, we're going to be looking at Countdown to Extinction, the first album I ever listened to from Megadeth.